Today on Everyday Injustice, we have Cynthia Rodriguez. She's a retired public defender who is running for DA in Yolo County, California. Ironically, it's my home county, which is next to Sacramento and the home of UC Davis. She is taking on four-term incumbent Jeff Reisig. In 2018, Reisig narrowly averted defeat when he defeated Public Defender Dean Johansson by a narrow margin. So welcome to our show, Cynthia.
Thanks, David. I'm really happy to be here.
So why are you running for DA?
Criminal justice is my passion, and I really have a vision for how the DA's office can become a community-centered office that pays attention to how the entire community functions together to make a safe, welcoming, and nurturing environment for its populace. And I think I can build that. I don't think the direction we've been going on builds that in any way. And that's what my vision is.
And talk a bit about your background.
My legal background, I'll start with that. And if you want more, I can go there. I started out in doing a lot of different kinds of law, joined Public Defender's Office about 4 years or into my career. I worked at the Public Defender's Office in Orange County. I worked at the Public Defender's Office in Solano County, and also at the State Public Defender's Office, which is an appellate only, that at the time did serious felonies and death penalty, and now only does death penalty. After I did that for many years, I think it's about 11 years, I never get the count right. I went to CDCR, where I did employment law, including discipline of correctional officers and other staff at almost every prison, at almost all of the 33 prisons. And the hearings with the witnesses are held at the prisons. So I've spent a lot of time with correctional officers, both the ones who were being disciplined and the ones who were gathering the investigative materials to go forward in hearings. And after that, I went to CalPERS, where I learned a lot about administration and organization. And then I was, for 8 years, the general counsel at the Department of Mental Health and the Department of State Hospitals. And that was basically the highest legal office in the state for mental health. And mental health law was really intense there, of course, and getting to see how the whole system plays out in the end, I thought was a really significant perspective on the many years I spent in criminal law itself, criminal defense. I really enjoyed that work. I enjoyed working with advocates and families and clients, people in custody, who came over from CDCR to be in the mental health system, which now is the majority of people in the mental health system. And I have a lot of ideas and desires to make our system work better, especially for this community at first, from my time at mental health, and eventually left the state about 1.5 years ago.
So why do you want to go from the defense side to the prosecution side?
My belief is in the criminal justice system. And when I joined a public defender's office, I had a great desire to be the spokesperson for people who had no spokesperson, for vulnerable and people in difficult circumstances. And I just feel like it's really the most constitutional thing you can do in America is to represent people in a complicated situation, a court situation, and help tell their stories. And I found that, mostly what I saw were a lot of regular folks who got into difficult situations, or whose situations were misunderstood, or who made serious mistakes and had to find a way to go forward after that. So that is not that far from the prosecution side. You're doing something in opposite to what the prosecutors are doing, and yet it's also it's part of the system. I worked with prosecutors all day long. I knew what they did and why they did it, and I've done many trials with them, and I think a prosecutor has a great opportunity to address the problems within the system at the base, and that's a really significant thing, to be able to make sure that we're treating people equally, to be able to make sure that we are finding what is actually the problem and either dealing with the problem or finding a way to deal with the perpetrators of the problem. You know, there's all kinds of combinations of what you're trying to do there. And I'm really excited about the prospect of being able to bring justice to Yolo County in a way that is equal, fair, responsible, and contributes to the well-being of the community.
So the incumbent Jeff Reisig has attempted to repackage himself as a reformer. Is he a reformer in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I have certainly noticed that too. And every time I've heard him speak or seen his quotes, he's constantly saying he's got progressive things going on. And I think what he is doing more than that is giving a nod to the progressive things people want to see. Yes, I'll make a few bed spaces open, or a few workspaces open for mental health cases, and a few opportunities for diversion, and a few opportunities for this and that, and then call myself a progressive. But that is not what he's doing, is not progressive, because it involves such a minuscule portion of the people being charged that each time he does it, it's the exception that proves the rule. And the rule is that folks like those with mental health issues, or disability issues, or first-time offenders are getting run over by the system, are getting missed out and ignored, and not being given the opportunity to fully, understand where they are and what they need to do to straighten out. So I don't think it's correct to label him in any way as a progressive. And I think that what we have mainly are his statements that he's a progressive, the absolute lack of clear statistical information about whom he's assisted and whom he's left out, kind of thrown away, tells you what's going on there. Because if they were good numbers, we would be hearing them, and we aren't. Even the portal that he's talked about to give more information about what's going on there is not bearing fruit at this time. And in all of his many terms in office, he has not yet made clear what his office is doing. And I know that is because the numbers, such as how many people of each racial group are in our jail, tell the story in themselves. There are more people, more vulnerable and minority people in custody than there are in the many more than are in the general population.
So what are your biggest concerns about him?
I'm concerned that Yolo County is going to keep trying to do things that have never worked in the past. So for example, in the case of turning the juvenile facility into a locked facility for people with drug problems, substance abuse problems, we are trying something that has been tried many times before, treatment in locked facilities, and that best evidence tells us is not an effective way of treating people with substance abuse. We all know that people forced into a locked facility have almost no chance of success, not even a small chance of success. It's very, very minute. And so to spend our money, our precious dollars, tax dollars, to put people in custody to treat a substance abuse problem is attacking a problem with an old system that never worked before and is not going to work now. What really works, what has been seen to be working with all kinds of different populations, the unhoused or homeless people, drug abuse problems, alcohol problems, is community resources. That money should be going into community resources, should be going into outreach where people are worried about there being problems, rather than into more incarceration. The incarceration system, mass incarceration, has been about as successful as the war on drugs, meaning not as successful at all. We know that from studying what's going on and listening to people who have done those research reviews, that we are not smart to continue doing what we did 40 years ago and not pay attention to the fact that we still have the exact same problem now. So those systems did not work.
So last week, Jeff Reisig joined Sacramento DA Ann Marie Schubert and about 39 other DAs across the state in opposing a plan by the governor to eventually release 76,000 incarcerated people. Please kind of discuss that.
You know, it's an interesting problem because there have been laws passed and propositions passed that talk about how people time should be considered and whether or not we want to continue the experiment of just throwing massive amounts of time at people as if that will change them or their neighborhood or the existence of the problems that communities have. And after that, after those rules that, including in Yolo County, after those propositions passed, people like Mr. Reisig and a number of other DAs have continued to fight against them as if the people hadn't spoken and said, this is what we want to try. This is what we want to do. This is what we think will work and what we know has not worked. So at this point, you know, having a CDCR, which cannot be considered some kind of liberal or against law and order organization, has written regulations, which they're obligated to do when the law changes, that will result in time changes for people who are in custody, lessening of time. And now the DAs want to fight it again. It's like they want another bite at the apple, another chance to say, no, don't let people out. No, don't do this. No, don't do that. You know, we take certain steps forward in society with by voting and by making decisions and continuing to politic against the people's decision, as Jeff Reisig has done with, you know, for example, clearly Proposition 47 and Proposition 57, which this county passed easily, is not what we want in a DA. A DA has discretion to do a lot of things, but to act in opposite to what people are asking for, voting for, telling them they want, I think is a misuse of prosecutorial discretion. And I think if more people understood what he was doing with the discretion that all prosecutors have to pick their battles, they would be very disappointed in knowing that he wasn't going along with what Yolo County has voted for and stood for all through his time as the DA.
So in addition, Reisig, along with Assemblymember Kevin McCarty, is supporting AB 1542. Reformers are concerned that this would simply install involuntary confinement for drug treatment. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I mentioned about 1542 and the fact that it doesn't follow any best evidence practices for how to treat or assist in ending drug problems, substance abuse problems that people have, you know, that's a reason not to do it. But the other reason I think is that and the reason I'm opposed to it is that I believe that 1542 makes substance abuse a status crime. So you're going to be allowed to be held in custody, because that's what it is, whether you're receiving treatment. Everybody can receive treatment in custody. That's always been the fact of the matter. And we could start up programs right now without any kind of new system. We could start up more programs in custody to allow people who need or want treatment to get so. But instead we're slapping a new label on people. And this time it's a medical label. A substance abuse problem is a medical problem. And to make that medical problem lead to incarceration, locked facility, I think is actually a civil rights issue that we're going to end up spending a lot of money on, you know, in California, when those fights come out after we have our pilot program in Yolo County and this starts to spread. This is a huge civil rights issues. And I think if you talk to attorneys, you'll see that a little bit of caution now could save us a lot of money in the future. And I also think once, as I said earlier, it's going back to practices that we've already seen do not work. And it's giving more power to prisons and jails and DAs than to the people who could actually successfully treat these problems, and they're not in a custodial setting. These problems are treated by resources in the community.
Reisig has made it a point to attack the zero bail program. Do you believe that the program that has sought to reduce jail populations during COVID has been a success? Why or why not?
I do believe it's been a success. There certainly are, as with every new program, there's problems, things that have to be polished, etc. And I was surprised when I saw Mr. Reisig at the Board of Supervisors meeting defending how, how he has embraced the cash bail elimination issue, which in no way is accurate. He has not embraced it. He has specifically come up with statistics in a kind of an odd way that he publishes regularly to make everybody, I think, to frighten people of the no bail system. I think the no bail system, they've discovered so much about it in the various places where it's been enacted. You call somebody up like a dental appointment, they tend to go to court. People who get in trouble sometimes have chaotic lives and they don't always remember these things. There's lots of ways to get people to court besides putting them in a situation where, first of all, they can't help their family, they can't work, they can't keep a job that they may have had that was their one link to possible success. They end up getting a huge record of by pleading to misdemeanors. Maybe they get taken in on a trespass and they just say one of the most common plea offers that I would get when I was a misdemeanor public defender was, get out today, plead guilty to XYZ, and he could get out today, and they'll have a year's probation, 2 years probation, 3 years probation, and people that way pile up a record, and that's actually something that happens to a lot of minorities. The reports on one of the reasons why there was so much upset in Ferguson is that Ferguson, Missouri. So the Black community was being picked up for, jaywalking and crossing streets and different really low-level offenses. But that meant that, it's harder for people, minorities who have or picked up more often like this to become part of the system, to become police officers or to become students or whatever, when they're always on probation and they're always paying fines and they're always sort of connected to that the criminal justice world, as opposed to connected to the school world or the many other opportunities in life. And I think that we need to understand that bail shouldn't be something that you have to have and then you are out free. Bail should be something that if you need to have a bail, it exists because of some safety issues or some appearance failures or something that is above and beyond just, I want your money, so I'm sure you'll show up. That's a less effective system, and it hits vulnerable people and minorities much harder. And when you think about it, there's no special reason we should let dangerous rich people out in any case, just because they can put up some money. They can also afford to lose it. So it's not an effective system in the long run.
And then discuss the Humphrey decision and your thoughts overall on bail.
I thought Humphrey had some good things to say. And the thing that's really nice about it is that it's not, people can't attack it for being kind of wild-eyed and radical. It simply says that about the cash bail system, that why should someone be in custody when the issue isn't safety? It's some kind of security or debtor's prison type of situation. I agree with that. I think it needs to go a little farther, but I think the courts, again, like the experiment through the pandemic of doing no bail, we have to work through some of these things. I hope we work through them more quickly than not.
And then, so last summer, and you kind of mentioned this already, but I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. Reisig responded to the public defender in Yolo County's comment about the disproportionate number of Blacks in the jail population. And he took real offense to it, which was kind of interesting because the public defender hadn't even mentioned him by name. She just pointed out that 28% of the people in the jail on a given day were Black, and the population overall was 3% in Yolo County. And so, how should Yolo County address racial inequities in the system?
I think first of all, we have to have statistics as we go. We have to know every day what's going on in our world, where the population is, what the percentages are, and where they're reasonable. And we have to look at everything that leads us to that. So we need to know how many, the percentage of reports that come over, what happens with the filing, what percentage are thrown out of each group, because of course the DAs don't file everything the police send over. They go through them and see where they can support a charge. And we need to understand why we are, so for example, if we have, take burglary as a category, why are some people who committed burglary in and why are they out? And we need to know about priors. This has to be a really logical and information-filled system in order to combat what's going on. Because otherwise, if you don't figure out why you're doing something, why are we making it so there are more Black people in custody because that's what's happening. We are making it. The system is making that happen. That's not an allegation against any one person. That's the way systemic bias works, is that it gets into your system and it makes things happen, go forward in a certain way. And we have to see what's being done at each level that furthers that systemic bias. And so I think that, and then at this point, Mr. Reisig has said that he's going to, somehow mark out everybody's race and maybe their name if it might indicate their race, and maybe they're this or that or the other. I don't think the solution is just for all of us to poke our eyes out and not notice anybody's color. That's not really how this works. Instead, it needs to be to look at ourselves and find out why we're doing what we're doing. And you can't do that without making it obvious to everybody what we're doing. And that may be uncomfortable, but none of us are above having to learn what is motivating this inequity. We need to know what the inequity is, what leads up to it, and to stop it. I mean, it's got to be, that's how you change things. It's not pretty and it's not easy, but it's the work that has to be done.
Well, and your point about doing the blind charging, I think is a good one, because one of the problems, and we see this in policing as well, is that the assumption seems to be that there's overt bias that's driving this problem rather than systemic problems. And so
right.
If there are systemic problems, then it doesn't matter if you blind charge people. That's not what the problem is.
Exactly. And it's, I think the truth of the matter is that most people don't want to be seen as, a person who's systemically biased, but we've all been raised here in this culture of America where we didn't come here from the moon. We are all raised with what the products of the past are. We have to see where they're interfering with our treatment of others, and that just requires constant vigilance. No two ways about it.
And then one more. So Yolo County has one of the highest trial percentages in the state. In fact, the last I checked, it was actually the highest trial rate per capita in the state. I don't know what that looks like now because, with COVID and everything, nothing's normal anyway. So that probably wouldn't be a useful measure right now. But, from your perspective, how should the DA reduce that number?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. Finding out what happened in the last 16 months wouldn't be useful, because who knows what the results of everybody sitting in front of their computer is, as opposed to everybody being on the spot. but yes, it is kind of legend that Yolo County does a very odd number, a very huge number of trials per capita without reason. And one of the interesting things that I bumped into is, I've talked to jurors all my career, and when you talk to the jurors in Yolo County, they tell you of experiences that they have that were unpleasant, not because they had to sit in a seat for days or because they thought there was a bad guy in the room or something. It's because we didn't know why we were there, that there were way too many charges, and that the DA was not reasonable about what he was telling us. And the complaints about presentation on the DA side are really one-sided in Yolo County, whereas they're not present in other counties. And I've practiced in several counties, many counties. So I think one of the things is everybody needs ground rules and supervision and understanding. And I don't think you let brand new DAs make all their own decisions about what's a reasonable outcome for a case. And I do think whenever you get a case, the DA's obligation is justice, not winning. And we need to achieve justice in the DA's case by looking at the case and determining, okay, this is what happened. It appears, he can be charged with this. It appears to be this, which may not be the same thing, and a reasonable outcome that would support the community interest and the victim's interest, and safety as well as rehabilitation is XYZ, and then not just go for broke. And I feel like what I hear about and what I've seen in cases that I've reviewed, which are multitude, is that there's kind of a go for broke outlook here, that charge everything but the kitchen sink and refuse to resolve it, even though you might get the same amount of time, or you might get the same amount of charges if you offered something reasonable. Every courthouse in this country has to have a certain number of cases that go to trial and a certain number of cases that where there's a resolution. Many cases go to resolution, and one reason is people know what's happened and they want to get it over with. They want to go forward and begin straightening their lives out. But if you don't ever offer them anything that they can plead to, then you're going to end up on the courthouse steps every time, and that's not productive for the county, for the residents, for the taxpayers. There's nothing positive about that. So I really would have I would spend a period of time seeing how folks are doing, seeing what they're doing, and then talk with them about what I thought the office should head for in order to be doing their actual job, which is justice, and not racking up hours or days or time or years in custody. I think everybody can be worked with. Most everybody can be worked with. And I'm very hopeful that that's the way it'll work there. I've always been a really collaborative leader and positive leader, and tried to find the best in everybody, staff-wise.
It's kind of a strange critique that because in general, my criticism of the justice system is that we have too few trials, that 97% of the cases system-wide get pled out, and that creates all sorts of problems, and there's trial penalties and things like that. But toward the point that you made about talking to jurors, I've had the exact same experience over the years.
It's unusual.
How many jurors have come to me and said, I've read your stuff over the years, and I went into the jury, and wow, I'm like, why are we even here? I don't understand why this case is being tried. And they're like, yeah, you're exactly right with your critique over the years. So it's an interesting observation, and I've heard that from quite a few people over a long period of time.
Well, and the point, and one of the many points that come from that is that, maybe people are getting experience at trials. Maybe they're getting ready to try really serious murder cases. But then again, to be a good trial attorney, what you need to develop is good judgment, not just trial skills, but judgment about what you're doing. And if you don't have the judgment to see when everybody, the victim, the perpetrator, or the alleged perpetrator, the community, the justice system, the incarceration system would be better off if you just reasonably dealt with a case. I mean, I've gone to trial on tons of cases, and I really believe in going to trial. If you don't put your money where your mouth is and say, you know, this is what I believe, I'm going to go to trial and show you that, then you are not worth your salt as a lawyer. But on the other hand, you also don't try, you know, things that people are ready and willing to admit to, or ready to accept a punishment that you would eventually get at least that little at hearing. So you have to be, like I say, you have to develop judgment, and trying everything that comes across your desk is not a good judgment, unless you have a very strange county.
So we've kind of laid out a critique of the current DA, and in our remaining time, I was wondering, you know, how you plan to reform the system.
Well, you know, I think that the system has to be, again, I think that the two most important things I see happening in the campaign and in my initial time in office are that we will have more transparency, that the community is aware of what we're doing, both in terms of the statistics of trials and what we're seeing come into our office, and what the makeup of the accused individuals is, as well as what we're spending the money on, where the money is, and if it's being traced to its source and spent accurately. There's a very odd system going where the DA has lots of leftover, but we don't exactly know where it all came from, and it didn't come from one place, so we can't put it in one place. But yet he has millions of dollars to use on this pilot program that was not something the Board of Supervisors used to ask him to work on the pilot program. It's the fiscal situation in the office, I think, is very much a part of what I'd like to see some openness on, some real clear information on it. And the other thing is, I would like people to begin to understand what DA discretion is, and to understand what things the DA can decide to pursue or not pursue, and to be able to tell us what they think of that. So, for example, there's trials aren't everything, and there's also there's work in the labor code, there's work in environmentalism, there's work in all kinds of things for the community that can help lower the crime rate. There's opportunities for the DA to do things there. And I think we ought to be getting input from the community about what the choices should be. And, you know, if I were to ever make a choice of A over B and they had equal popularity, I would need to be able to explain why, even though they were equally popular, one of them appears to be more promotive of what the DA is supposed to do. So that's how I would start the reform. And then I would build it as I would, you know, as I would want to see a DA's office, a good place to work, a place I'd want to work for the staff, as well as a place that the community can believe is supportive of their safety, collaboration, and positive atmosphere for people to raise their kids and not be worried that if, you know, Johnny makes a mistake at 16 and steals a candy bar or whatever they're stealing these weeks, that he'll have a chance to have a diversion. I mean, I really plan to hit hard, and there's a lot of statutory opportunity for diversion that doesn't demand at all district attorneys to review every case. You know, if you're a first offender in many areas of the law, there are prescribed programs, and I would like to see all of those working in Yolo County. They're not free. Money might have to be shifted around. We have to work certainly in collaboration with social services and other programs that develop those things. But that is something really worthwhile, especially so that people who aren't headed for a life of crime don't get pushed there because of youthful mistakes or, you know, first time errors in judgment. We've all had to learn in our years on this planet, and we shouldn't make it so some people's lessons are harder than they need be.
So if you had to pick like a prosecutor that you would emulate if you got elected, who would that be?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I don't know that I would pick anybody, because I don't know if anybody's had my experience in terms of my years with mental health, my years with, criminal defense, my years with CDCR, seeing officers, do things that they needed to, that even other officers acknowledged they needed to be somehow disciplined on or let go for. And I see those as things that inform me and give me a unique perspective on what I want to see in the office. And, there's a lot of judges who have been prosecutors. I tend to look at them and listen to their language to see if they are proud of what they did as a prosecutor, or now as a judge, see more sort of less aggressive ways that they could arrive at this something similar. So I'm not willing to align myself with any single person these days, and I really feel like I have a unique perspective.
So what does the campaign look like these days as we're coming out of COVID, but we're not really out of COVID?
It's really interesting because I am really excited. We were talking about how this is going to be so strange to do everything virtually on Zoom or whatever, and how, that might not be my best suit. I like to get out and kind of talk to people and mix it up. And now here, all of a sudden, I think we were all a little bit surprised at how quickly the no mask for those vaccinated, I'm of course vaccinated, order came out, and the feeling that we may be able to get out in the streets. I know that we certainly have had a number of offers to do meet and greets at private households. And I frankly would like to get out and meet people just on the street and in the parks and in wherever I need to go. I really feel that shaking hands or bumping elbows is a great way to have people have a human feeling about you and understand that, you have both strength and compassion, and that you will be looking for the best way to resolve things, and that you'll instill that in your deputies. I believe in strong leadership and some freedom for people who show their good judgment and things like that. But that'll be next. So right now it's looking like we're about to change course. That's what it's looking like. It's looking like we're not going to do a million Zoom events, which I think people will be grateful for, and that we are going to get out more. And I'm really looking forward to that. For a candidate, at least for me, sounds like a much more pleasurable way to connect with the public.
So we're just about out of time. Any closing thoughts?
No, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to folks, and I really appreciate the questions because you know the county so well, and I don't mean to speak ill of anybody, because I think that the less time we spend humiliating each other in this life, the better. But I don't think that Yolo County has been on the best course it could be on, and I don't think that believing somebody when they say, I'm doing progressive things, when the progressive things they are doing are only touching a very, very minute number of people. To do something progressive, like have diversion available for all first offenders in petty theft and in drug use and in those things, having that available for everybody is changing. Having it available for 15, 25, 35 people a year is not life-changing in the county. Those are just samplers that can't make a difference for all of us. So I think we should be proud when we get to that point that we have those things on offer to everyone.
So thank you so much for coming on our show this week.
Thank you for having me.
This has been Everyday Injustice. That's Cynthia Rodriguez. She's a retired public defender who is running for DA in Yolo County, California. This has been Everyday Injustice. I'm your host, David Greenwald. Join us again next week for more tales from the injustice system.